Abraham once haggled with God for 20 minutes to save a city full of violent strangers. But when God told him to kill his own innocent son, not a single word of protest. He just woke up early and started walking. Same man, same God, completely opposite responses. This paradox sits at the heart of Genesis. The text places these stories near each other deliberately, forcing readers to wrestle with a question it never answers. Which response does God actually want? To understand this tension, we need to examine each story on its own terms. The details matter. The silences matter even more. Let's start with Sodom. God reveals his plan to investigate Sodom and potentially destroy it. Abraham's response is shocking. He argues back. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? Then comes the negotiation. Abraham asks, what if there are 50 righteous people? God agrees to spare the city. Abraham pushes further. 45, 40, 30, 20, 10? Each time God agrees. Abraham stops at 10, perhaps assuming any city must contain at least that many decent people. The outcome devastates his assumption. When the angels arrive, the mob includes all the people to the last man. Not even 10 righteous found. Sodom burns. One person does escape, Lot. But the text makes clear he's saved not for his own righteousness. Lot himself is no prize, but for Abraham's sake. This introduces a concept that echoes throughout Jewish tradition, the merit of the righteous. One person's faithfulness can benefit others. Abraham's relationship with God extends protection to his nephew. The city burns, but Abraham's argument wasn't worthless. Before we continue, we need to address something you've probably assumed about this story. You've heard the word sodomy. You've assumed you knew what Sodom's sin was. The Hebrew Bible tells a different story. The text uses a specific term, tza'akah, outcry. This is technical language in Hebrew for the cry of victims of violent oppression. The same word describes the Israelites suffering in Egypt. In the ancient Near East, hospitality was an optional politeness. Strangers were sacred, to be protected at all costs. The mob's demand to know the visitors means violent gang rape, an act of domination and brutality, not sexuality. The homosexuality interpretation appears only in later texts, not here. Now, we come to a story that's almost the opposite, not because of what it says, but because of what it refuses to say. The literary critic Eric Auerbach noticed something remarkable. When Homer describes Odysseus' scar, he gives 70 lines of backstory, every detail illuminated. The Bible works differently. 3 days of walking to Mount Moriah. One sentence. Abraham's feelings about killing his son. Nothing. God's reasons for this command. Silence. This isn't poor writing. It's strategic concealment. The text makes readers work. Consider Abraham's response when Isaac asks about the sacrificial animal. In Hebrew, without punctuation, the sentence reads, God will provide the sheep for the offering my son. 2 readings are grammatically valid. Option 1, God will provide the sheep for the offering my son. A comma before my son, meaning Abraham addresses Isaac reassuringly. Option 2, God will provide the sheep for the offering my son. A colon before my son, meaning Isaac is the sheep. The text supports both. Abraham may be lying, hoping, or confessing. We cannot know. This radical economy creates a cascade of unanswerable questions. Does Abraham intend to go through with it, or does he trust God will intervene at the last moment? How old is Isaac? A small child who doesn't understand? A grown man who could easily overpower his elderly father? Does Isaac figure it out during the 3-day walk? When he sees no animal, does he grasp the double meaning in his father's words? When Abraham binds him on the altar, does Isaac struggle, or does he bare his neck willingly? The text supports all these readings simultaneously. Every generation of readers feels the silence differently. That's the point. Now we return to the paradox. Abraham defends wicked strangers with passionate argument. He won't let God destroy Sodom without a fight. But when God commands him to kill his innocent son, the text records no protest, no negotiation, no appeal to God's justice. He wakes early, he saddles his donkey, he starts walking. This isn't a contradiction the text accidentally created. It's placed there deliberately. The juxtaposition forces uncomfortable questions. Is arguing with God an act of faith or faithlessness? Abraham challenges divine justice at Sodom, and God engages with him, respects the argument, agrees to his terms. Is silent obedience an act of faith or moral failure? Abraham says nothing about Isaac, and the angel stops him at the last moment, praising his faithfulness. The text refuses to resolve this tension, perhaps because the tension itself is the teaching. Faith isn't a formula. It's a relationship that defies simple rules. What can readers do with this? First, recognize that biblical narrative often teaches through juxtaposition rather than explicit instruction. The text places stories next to each other and lets the friction generate meaning. Second, when reading ancient texts, ask, what is this text not telling me and why? The gaps aren't flaws, they're invitations. Third, understand that interpretive traditions develop over centuries. The sin of Sodom equals homosexuality emerges long after Genesis was written. Reading accurately means distinguishing the text from its later interpretations. Finally, sit with moral ambiguity. The Bible doesn't always resolve its tensions. Modern readers want clear answers. Was Abraham right to argue? Was he right to obey? Which response should we emulate? The text won't say. 3,000 years of commentary won't say either, because the greatest interpreters understood that wrestling with the question matters more than settling it. Abraham argued with God and was heard. Abraham obeyed God and was praised. Both are true, both are faithful. The contradiction isn't a problem to solve, it's a mystery to inhabit. The genius of these stories isn't that they give us answers, it's that they've kept people arguing for 3,000 years. Abraham the arguer, Abraham the silent, both images preserved, both held up as models of faith. The tradition that descends from him, Jewish, Christian, Islamic, has never stopped debating which response God truly wants. Maybe that's exactly what Abraham would have wanted. A man who haggled with the Almighty probably wouldn't mind if his descendants kept the conversation going. The text gives us the question, the silence gives us room to think, and somewhere in that space between argument and obedience, faith takes shape.